Hi there. Let's read tonight The Deceiver by Ashapurna Debi. Prominent Bengali novelist, short story writer and poet Ashapurna Debi was one of the first women writers to claim a position in a literary canon, otherwise dominated by the standards set by male writers. In her career spanning 70 years, Ashapurna wrote extensively about the private lives of her characters within middle-class Bengali households. Her short story, The Deceiver, has been translated by twice winner of the Crossword Translation Award, Arunava Sin. Let's begin. The taxi sped past the two people standing there, gaping, gazing bitterly in the direction in which the vehicle disappeared. While the dust it had raised settled back on the road, they marched off. To hell with it, what do we care? After a long journey with several turns, the taxi stopped in front of a building where a wedding ceremony was underway. It was one of those 30,000 rupee weddings, with corresponding grandeur in light arrangements, stage decorations, and gate ornamentation. Dressed to match such splendor, Anindita Sen and her married daughter Ajanta Bose got out of the taxi. Anindita Sen was brimming with regret for having to arrive in a taxi on such an occasion. But what could she do? For fate was against her. Today, of all days, her husband had to take the car on official work to Barasat or Sonarpur or some such place. The wedding was taking place in Anindita Sen's brother's house. Her niece was getting married. She had been visiting regularly for the past few days, and even that morning, although in less ostentatious garments. Now she got out of the taxi with her daughter, glinting in silk and embroidery and sequins and beads. She got out laughing and talking at the same time. Had the groom arrived? Had the first of the guests been disposed of in terms of dinner? Anindita Sen became voluble with such questions as soon as she had arrived. Her daughter, Ajanta Bose, was not as loquacious, but she had dressed to dazzle. She had a rather innovative outfit made for her dearest friend and cousin's wedding. She had dressed not as a Bengali woman, but as a courtesan from Lucknow. The combination of a dupatta, ghagra, choli and matching jewelry was undoubtedly a novelty. But people began to exchange glances the moment they got out of the taxi. Was it because they were overdressed? Perhaps excessively so. Were their clothes and appearance so abhorrent to everyone? It wasn't as though no one else had overdone things. There was Mandira Roy, the bouffon on her head resembling a Sikh's turban. There was Henna Haldar, who had grown her nails to a point where they looked longer than her fingers. Who knew how many months she has been growing them, all for this wedding? She had painted them in 3 different shades, but no one was staring at them, certainly not with such strange, confused looks. And what about the soft murmurs of uneasiness that could be heard beneath the sounds of happiness and laughter at the wedding? Whom was it for? People seemed to be exchanging covert whispers everywhere. About what? No one had actually singled them out, but the eyes of all the people who had gathered for the wedding seemed to have become a collective finger pointing in their direction at Anindita Sen and her daughter. But the funny thing was, bubbling over as they were with their own joy, they weren't aware of any of this. Anindita Sen was uniting the universe with a constant stream of observations, and Ajanta Bose was sitting like a queen bee amidst a circle of women spreading her radiance in all directions. And yet, Ajanta was wondering, why aren't the stars in my eye? Somewhere the melody had been interrupted. The rhythm had broken. Ajanta's fingers were not doing magic with the strings. Was it her dressing as a courtesan from Lucknow that had appeared unseemly to people? But why? At her own wedding, just the other day, her cousin had won everybody's heart by dressing as a fruit seller from Kashmir and singing and dancing. How much everyone had enjoyed it. Had Ajanta become too old for this sort of thing in a year and a half that had passed? Anyway, let the groom take his place after the ceremonies. Ajanta would show them. With song and laughter and her sparkling sense of humor, she would ensure the poor man realized what a gem of a sister in law he had acquired. Anindita wasn't thinking of any of this. She was just blazing a trail wherever she went. Well, ladies, I hope you can do the rituals properly. However modern we are, weddings are no fun without the rituals. Oh my, I didn't see you all this time. Where have you been? Is that a new necklace you're wearing? Oh my god, Ushashi. What a murderously beautiful sari that is. Where'd you buy it? You're copying the fish fry yourself instead of serving it. Think I can't see? Who's handing out the palm? Give me one. Where's the bride's mother? Haven't seen her all evening. What's this? Are you going to hide now that you're mother-in-law? No rest for the tongue. Anindita Sen seemed to have vowed not to rest her faculty of speech. The groom's here, a commotion began, like a mighty torrent. The more the people, the stronger it was, and those who were celebrating the groom's arrival were not behaving strangely. Their music had not been interrupted. They were men. Here, though, a string broke with a twang. It happened when the married women were gathering to welcome the groom. Ajanta was rushing to join in. After all, she had personally decorated some of the trays that morning. Ajanta's aunt, the bride's mother, swooped like a hawk to snatch the tray from her hand, saying, "Never mind, you can't do all this in a ghagra and a dupatta." Tears of humiliation welled up in Ajanta's eyes. "Why didn't you tell me earlier, Mommy?" she said. "I'd have dressed in a sari." Her aunt said sulkily, "No need. No dirt of married woman here. We have 77 where we need 7. This was true. 77. But was Ajanta supposed to be one in a crowd? A rich man's daughter, a rich man's wife. The pretty Ajanta had always been the center of attraction at her uncle and aunt's house. Biting her lips, Ajanta decided the ghagra was a mistake. But how strange! Everybody had known. After all, Ajanta's aunts had been with her when she had bought the dupatta. It must be the 1,000 and odd women gathered here who were at the root of all this. Never mind, she wouldn't try to welcome the groom. She would just light up the gathering after the ceremonies with the bride and groom and the friends and family. But even that didn't seem acceptable to anyone. The mild opposition and the suppressed buzz of discontent was neither mild nor suppressed now. They were about to swell into sharp anger and furious condemnation. A meeting had been summoned downstairs in the room where the glasses were stored. 2 of Anindita Sen's sisters were present, as were the bride's mother and her elder sister. Even the bride's father himself had been asked to join. He would arrive at any moment. The agitated voices were becoming more and more aggressive. Does she mean to continue this way? What if she starts games with the married couple? She has already ensconced herself where the bride and groom will go. Send for Annie. Get her to come to her senses. Is there any way to behave on such a day? We can't even make a fuss. No one wants the festivities to be marred. But the bride's elder brother arrived, a distressed, beleaguered look on his face, along with a frown. "Well, what have you decided?" "Whatever all of you say. We have sent for him. Where is he?" "On his way. My colleagues are eating." The bride's father arrived. He looked flustered. His expression suggested pressure, not sorrow. "What I am saying is, why not let things be as they are, since Annie doesn't know whatever Saint Moshe thinks is right." "Ooh, so clever." The bride's mother barked. "I have just the one daughter and you're suggesting—" The incomplete sentence carries more weight. Scratching his pate, the bride's father said, "Well then, here's an idea. You can say Same Moshai couldn't make it here after returning from Parasat. He sent word that he isn't well, so Anindita and Ajanta should. They approved of this. After all, a man's brain. This wouldn't lead to an uproar among the wedding guests, but the mother and daughter would leave as quickly as they could. Meanwhile, Ajanta was sitting with the bride, whispering her artificial regret into her cousin's ear. See, what a horrible man he is. Didn't come. You won't believe how I entreated him in the letter. Your parents did too. People travel all the way from England for a wedding, and he's just a few hours away in Durgapur. Tell me, Mr. Groom, isn't this cruelty on the part of your gender? Who knew what the groom would have said? But the bride's brother summoned her gravely. Just a minute, Ajanta. Ajanta missed a heartbeat. The summons was ominous. She rose to ask him, What is it, Rangada? It's just that your father is not well. It would be best if you went home. Ajanta paled. Did Baba leave because he was unwell, Rangada? No, he didn't even come. Didn't come? Ma? Where's Ma? She is somewhere downstairs. Her cousin hurried away. The heart cannot tarry where calamity looms large. It was he who went off to inform Anindita. Anindita was astonished at first. What? You mean your uncle didn't even come? I thought he had eaten and left without telling us. Anindita's effusiveness deflated suddenly. Running up against the wall of silence around her, she rushed into a car with her daughter. Someone had volunteered a vehicle from the 2 rows parked on the road. Ajanta was distraught. How is Baba? If he couldn't even come on Ronu's wedding night, it means he's not strong enough. But it was impossible to tell Anindita's thoughts from her face. Perhaps she had turned to stone out of fury with her husband for choosing this particular day to turn hostile. Why were her eyes looking like glass? Jumping out of the car, still resplendent in her silk and embroidery and sequins and beads, Ajanta was taken aback. Her father wasn't ill at all. He was pacing up and down in front of the house. What was it? She ran up to him. What's happened to you, Baba? Go inside, said Mr. Sen, sounding like thunder. Tears sprang to Ajanta's eyes at his tone. What was all this? Why was everyone humiliating her in unison today? Covering her eyes with her silk dupatta, Ajanta entered the house. Anindita was about to follow her in, without a word to her husband, possibly to announce the intensity of her anger. Wait, said Sen. Anindita turned towards him. The gaudy end of a white Banarasi silk sari flashed, and she wrinkled her nose in contempt. Well, is this a trial for my crime? She said. A court-martial? Sen lost his patience. Quiet, he exclaimed. Answer my question first. Did 2 people from Durgapur come here before you left? Anindita stood stock still. They did, she said. What did they tell you? Anindita said even more steadily. Nothing. I didn't let them. You didn't let them? No. This was true. Anindita had indeed not allowed them to speak. They had said, We are coming from Durgapur. Anindita had looked at them. Anindita had read their faces. So, Anindita had pretended to be busy. If you could come tomorrow, please. I do not have time right now. I'm about to go out. They had pleaded desperately. You don't understand. It's a very important news. Nishit Bose, your son-in-law, isn't he? In Durgapur today. Yes, I understand. He can't make it. I knew he wouldn't come. There was no need to send word ceremonially. Shepherding her daughter into a taxi, Anindita had got in behind her. The men had been so frantic that they had practically jumped in front of the vehicle. Please listen to what we have to say. At 11 this morning, Mr. Bose. At 11, Anindita had said. He is arriving at 11. There's no tea at that time. Is he coming by road? That's something. Namaskar, please don't mind. I'm very busy. The taxi had sped past the 2 people standing there gaping. A worried Ajanta had asked, What were they saying, Ma? Anindita had dismissed the question. She had dismissed it airily. She had said, The poor dear can't make it, so now he's sent word to absolve himself, saying he will come by road if he can. Ajanta had looked glum. I knew he wouldn't. Right from the beginning, he's been saying, take 2 days off to attend your cousin's wedding. Are you mad? Anindita remembered all this clearly. Sen roared like an enraged tiger. Were you in such a hurry to attend the wedding that you couldn't even hear them out? Looking her husband in the eye, Anindita articulated her words clearly. There was no need to hear what they had to say. It was written on their faces. What do you mean? Sen gripped his plump, ornamented wife by the arms and shook her like a child. What are you trying to say? You knew from their faces, and knowing that Nishit was dead, you still? Yes, knowing that he was dead. But can you tell me what harm this has caused in this huge wide world? Just when Ajanta was on her way to a wedding celebration, so cheerful and happy, if I had dragged her down to the road and told her, it's all over for you, your life has ended, you don't belong to this world anymore, how would that have benefited anyone? Never mind all this poetry. There's a limit to pretense. Don't you know one of Nishit's uncle is related to your sister-in-law's family? Everyone at the wedding was scandalized while the two of you were dressed as dancers. Anindita was not perturbed at this condemnation. She seemed to have forgotten how to be distressed. She said calmly, I knew someone in Bodhi's family is Nishit's uncle. All I didn't know was that the news would travel so quickly through all these family connections. I thought the girl had been waiting 6 months for a wonderful evening at Runu's wedding. Let her have one. The last time she'll be able to celebrate. After this, there'll be a lifetime wrapped in ice. I had thought of stealing 3 hours from the ocean of eternity, hoping that no one would notice. But I see it didn't work. The entire world was up in arms against the theft. Gazing for a minute or so at the tears coursing over Anindita's rouged cheeks, Sen rebuked her indignantly. I get the argument. But how could you? She didn't know, but you did. How could you still have a good time at the wedding? I had thought that was what would fool people. Stupidity. I had thought that was what would fool people. Stupidity. And as for how I could get myself to do it, maybe human beings shouldn't be able to do such a thing. But you did. You just did too. You found it easy to demand an explanation for why I stole 3 hours from your daughter's eternal widowhood. Motherhood defines a woman's identity then, and sadly, it defines her even now. Some of Debi's heroines are in fact more rebellious and progressive than some of the present-day women. Debi's women were situated within the domestic space, but they knew how to subvert even in submission. Just like the mother in this story, she tries to steal a few hours for her daughter by concealing a bitter truth.